than by connecting to a traditional ground tower, has become really popular with consumers who live in rural areas or who like to travel to rural areas, who like to hike. It has also become very important in emergency services. And when you look at a company like SpaceX, it has also given Elon Musk significant influence over global conflicts. We've seen these sort of back and forths about whether SpaceX should turn on satellites in places like Ukraine during its war with Russia. Now, this is going to allow Amazon to grow its satellite business called LEO. It's going to continue to remain a much smaller player than SpaceX, but the company's goal is to have thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit by the end of this year. Globalstar, this company that Amazon is acquiring, also brings a partnership with Apple where it provides emergency satellite connectivity for iPhones. Amazon says that will continue and even expand into watches in the coming years. Amazon is paying handsomely for this. They are paying $90 a share for Globalstar, 30% premium on where the shares closed at the time deal talks were reported. And I think that gives you a sense of just how much potential they see in this business. Amazon is talking about this, giving consumers more choice. You know, they're looking for a competitor to SpaceX. I think the question is just how quickly they can scale up this business. Can they become a real viable competitor to SpaceX? And will we see more acquisitions like this in this space as companies look to compete with Elon Musk? Back to you.
Powerball is crossing the pond to the UK. The American lottery game will join with the UK's national lottery this summer, pending approval by a UK gambling commission. It's the first time a lottery outside the US will contribute to the Powerball jackpot. Officials are hoping the joint venture will build larger jackpots that attract more players. Powerball is already played in 45 US states, as well as Washington, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. The new agreement won't affect how the other large US lottery game, Mega Millions, operates. I want to thank you so much for your company. I'm Rosemary Church. Have yourselves a wonderful day. World Sport is coming up next.
African Voices, in association with Glow Unlimited.
I was pretty much like a geek. Then when I was in school, I used to come and sit at the edge there.
And just watch.
And sometimes write songs, listen to music. So 2017 was when I dropped the Shape of You cover.
Right.
Yeah, so I took this picture right there on the edge there. So I just told my friend then to just like,
oh my goodness.
So that's the bridge there.
This is like a full circle moment to come back here. When you were there in 2016, standing where we're standing, did you ever imagine you'd become a global superstar?
At that point, 2016, I was just doing music because I enjoyed doing it. It was like my escape from real life.
Right.
Just creating and all of that. But I didn't know, like I couldn't have seen it becoming this big and this at this level.
Yeah.
Like I'm on CNN. What are you talking about?
I'm Daniel Dae Kim.
Nice to meet you.
Actor, producer, and proud Korean American.
It's going to be one of those nights.
I'm going to South Korea, where I was born.
Exactly what I remember as a kid.
To figure out how this small nation conquered the world with its culture.
I saw your move.
And it's only getting started.
That's going to get people up out of their seat.
From the music that fueled a movement.
Day ones, we love you.
To your new favorite food.
Suck it out.
That's savage.
Viral beauty trends.
The beauty standards in Korea are just very detailed.
To must-see films and TV.
They are making Asians look really cool.
Join me and meet the artists and creators behind the phenomenon.
Everything premieres May 9th on CNN in association with Hyundai.
It's amazing, the sights and the smells.
Women growing, selling, and using cannabis.
Do you wish you had started using cannabis earlier in life?
I do. So do my kids.
Does their shared passion for pot pose any risks? Dr. Sanjay Gupta reports. Read 8 on CNN.
who was at Anfield on Tuesday evening. Well, an already difficult evening for the hosts, getting even more. Dembele, who makes it PSG a class apart as they reach the semis again. Can open his legs for 1-0 Barca, a dream start for Hansi Flick's men. Then 20 minutes later, it's Ferran Torres making it 2-0 on the night. And just like that, Atleti's first leg advantage is one. Well, joining us now is our senior sports analyst, Darren Lewis, right there for us in London. Darren, thanks so much for joining us. Atletico and Diego Simeone doing what they do, right? Frustrating the opposition, losing on the night, but they're still through to the semis for the first time since 2017. How did they do it?
Another epic night. Hi there, Pat. Epic night of Champions League knockout drama. Yeah, and you're right. Atletico advancing at the expense of a Barcelona side who must surely have thought that they were on course to leave hearts heavy in Madrid with those 2 goals in the opening 25 minutes. Brilliant start for them. I have to...
Atleti fans. All right, well, lightning striking twice to undermine Barcelona's efforts. Darren, identical red cards in each leg. What did you make of the decisions, and how much is this now going to hurt Barcelona, this exit?
Well, it was the right decision in both cases. And here's a problem for them, Pat. They just can't defend. I discussed it in one of our earlier shows. Their head coach, Hansi Flick, he sends out a high line. His defenders defending near the halfway line. It really does leave their defence exposed, especially against quick forwards. Again, look at that Lookman goal. The sending off last week and the sending off this week and the goal, they all came from that Barca high line because it enables forwards who are very quick to get past their defenders, home in on goal, leaving defenders with no other option but to take them down. And here's a stat for you, Pat. No team has conceded more Champions League goals since the start of last season than Barca. They are the first Spanish side to go 15 games without a clean sheet in the competition. Flick is surely, if he wants to win this competition, going to have to find another way to play.
That stat kind of says it all, doesn't it? Putting it into perspective for us. Darren, let me speak about PSG. A touch of class from them on the night to see off Liverpool. They lost 2 starters to injury, but still plenty of firepower off the bench to see the game through. Who, if anyone, can stop them?
Yeah, it's a really good question because it really was a nightmare night for Liverpool all round. I'll talk about the Ekitiko injury in a second, but Barca made sure of their place in the semi-finals.
All right, watch this space, Darren Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Pat.
Coming up, what they call flag football hitting the Olympic stage in 2028. No pads, no problem. Our Alex Michelson chatting to some playmakers with ankle-breaking intentions in a sport that's well and truly on the rise.
In every corner of Africa are breathtaking landscapes, inspiring breakthroughs,
All right, let's go!
and the people that enrich communities. Delve deep into every facet of this great continent. Inside art and culture, sports, inside business, tech, and so much more. Inside Africa on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
Explore Africa with CNN, where 54 nations create the fabric of this rich continent. This is really complex. Discover business,
economic trends. Clearly, you're seeing something here.
Nature, and culture, and the stories shaping Africa today.
Exported to markets around the world.
The energy is amazing. Feels so good to be here.
So this is rapidly becoming a very chaotic scene now.
A lot of people are now fighting to put food on the table.
She wants to invite us in to see how she's living.
2 months ago, this camp didn't even exist.
They will not stay there. We, Jews, will be in Gaza.
That sounds like ethnic cleansing.
Can you see how deep that is?
He kept screaming, Dad, Dad. What is the next step now? How do you start a new life?
A warm welcome back to you. Flag football is coming to the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and the NFL is embracing it in a big way. Our Alex Michelson, host of CNN's The Story Is, with more.
The
the stars are out and the competition is fierce for flag football. What do you make of flag football?
I love it. I'm so glad I love it. Come on, Aaron.
On this day, we're at quarterback Aaron Rodgers' 5th annual RX3 Charity Flag Football Tournament in Orange County, California. Attendees here bid for the chance to play with their favorite quarterback.
No one's getting paid. All the quarterbacks are here to support a cause that means a lot to them.
Each QB picks a different charity to support. Carolina Panthers QB Bryce Young is backing his own family's Young 9 Foundation, which tackles youth mental health.
I'm super proud of it. My family works very close on it, so I've been grateful for the work we've been able to do.
Active QBs here include the Broncos' Jared Stidham and the Steelers' Will Howard.
How does flag compare to pads? It's similar. It's definitely not the same. You know, you're not as worried about throwing guys into headaches out here.
Flag football's popularity has grown as concerns about head injuries in tackle football expand.
There's nothing like getting the juices flowing when you're out here, so that's for sure.
This game allowing former NFL QBs like Matt Leinart, Carson Palmer, and Michael Vick to get back on the field.
How's it feel?
I'm not gonna lie, my shoulder's tired already.
Throwing is always like riding a bike. It's the running that I'm worried about.
Many of these retired tackle football stars are now heavily involved in flag.
You know, I've got a daughter that plays girls flag football at the high school level.
We have like over 3,000 girls that play in our Matt Leinart flag football leagues in Orange County, which is really awesome.
I coach flag football, really good teams, and we have a bunch of fun, and I'm not missing anything from tackle.
Chase me.
Nah, chase me.
The NFL's making a major investment in flag football, the league backing youth leagues across the country, plus a professional league, and turned its Pro Bowl game into a flag football competition.
Flag football will be an Olympic sport for the first time ever during the 2028 LA Games. The question is, will any of these guys be on the team? Would you consider playing on the Olympic team?
Oh, absolutely. It would be an honor.
Look, I think if I could be an Olympian in any form or fashion, I would say yes.
During the Super Bowl, the NFL aired an ad featuring Eagles QB Jalen Hurts promoting flag football at the LA Olympics.
It's our turn.
Hurts recently joined other current and former NFL stars like Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and Joe Burrow in a televised battle against the current men's national team in flag football. And the national team beat the pro football stars. On that same day, the women's national team is here at the RX3 tournament, showcasing their skills.
What do you think that moment of having this as an Olympic sport in Los Angeles, what do you think that's going to do for generations of female athletes?
I mean, it really truly gives them something to work for. You know, when I was a kid, everybody wants to be an Olympic athlete, and I never played a sport that could be in the Olympics, and now that flag football is an Olympic sport, it gives these girls opportunities to make their dreams come true.
Alex Michelson, CNN, Costa Mesa, California.
Thanks to Alex there. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Take care and stay with CNN. Bye for now.
everyone, and welcome to Amanpour. Here's what's coming up.
Israel and Lebanon break the diplomatic ice after 40 years. What this could mean for the humanitarian crisis on the ground and the IDF's still expanding operation into Lebanon. I speak to MSF official Christopher Stokes and military analyst Amos Harel. Also ahead,
we have no food or water, with no clothes and barefoot, and we came fleeing on foot.
as Sudan enters its fourth year of bloodshed and loss, I speak with philanthropist Mo Ibrahim, who warns the fallout could spill beyond the country's borders. Plus,
men have a fear of sort of admitting vulnerability because vulnerability can be misconstrued somehow as weakness.
Who needs friends? How a cross-country road trip rekindled old friendships. Actor Andrew McCarthy tells Hari Srinivasan why men need closer connections with each other.
Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Bianca Goladriga in New York, sitting in for Christian Amanpour. Does diplomacy still stand a chance? Israel and Lebanon are meeting in Washington in their highest-level direct talks in more than 40 years. The historic negotiations are part of a U.S.-brokered attempt to end Israel's war with Hezbollah. But the gaps of disagreement are wide, and progress could be dashed by the Iran-backed militia, which says that it won't abide by any agreement reached in the meeting. Yet, as momentous as these talks may be, on the ground, the reality is far less hopeful for civilians. Although Israel has scaled back attacks on Lebanon this week, dozens of people have been reported killed in the past day. And Lebanese communities are still reeling from the biggest Israeli assault of the conflict last Wednesday, which killed 300 people and wounded more than 1,000. That is according to Lebanon's health ministry. And for the Lebanese people grappling with loss and displacement, there's little hope that negotiations will herald change.
As for the negotiations, as usual, I'm not very hopeful. But God willing, this will lead to a lasting solution. We hope that our Prime Minister will pay close attention to the negotiations and make sure they're successful so all these people can go home.
The current situation is hopeless. We don't see any glimmer of hope for the future.
Healthcare workers have also been victims in this war. Since early March, dozens of medics have been killed in Israeli strikes. MSF volunteers have been working across 3 major hospitals in Lebanon, and their emergency coordinator, Christopher Stokes, joins me now live from Beirut. Christopher, welcome to the program. As we noted, you are there live on the ground in Beirut. Beyond the headlines, what is the immediate reality facing civilians there and your colleagues who are working effortlessly to help them?
Well, the immediate reality for all the Lebanese is a life of fear and uncertainty for the moment. I'm in central Beirut. Yesterday I was in the south of the country, and overhead you regularly hear drones that are aiming to acquire targets for further strikes. Last Wednesday, we had a massive attack with over 100, the day after the ceasefire actually, over 100 strikes in 10 minutes. And so there was something like 300 dead and well over 1,000 casualties just in that moment. And then you have massive displacement. So the city is teeming with people who've been expelled from the south of the country.
And as we've noted, your team is working with a mass influx of casualties, including a child who recently lost 6 family members. The WHO has warned that critical supplies are running out. Healthcare workers are pushed to exhaustion there as they're working around the clock to help these civilians. Are hospitals equipped at this point to provide the aid that is needed?
Yeah, first off, the Lebanese health professionals are really doing an amazing job. They've been at this for over 40 days. And you have to imagine in many of these hospitals, perhaps they'd receive 1 or 2 heavy casualties, polytraumas a week. And now they're getting 10, 15 a day. Just today, yesterday, there were 35 dead and 159 wounded across the country as a result of Israeli airstrikes. And this is really happening every single day. But the staff are exhausted. Sometimes their hospitals are damaged as well. So when they're not treating patients, they're sweeping broken glass or trying to repair the damaged infrastructure because of strikes that happen quite close to their hospitals. And many of the Lebanese professionals are actually doctors and nurses are sleeping in the hospitals. They live on the ground floor because it's so dangerous to move, to come to and from the hospital. So everything is a struggle.
And yet, it's not a new struggle. Lebanon is very familiar, unfortunately, to this type of fighting and destruction between Hezbollah and Israel there in this part of the country in particular. We've been covering it just recently over the past years, but you could go back decades, and this conflict was still as deadly as it is today. And that is my question to you in terms of the destruction. Are you seeing something different now than what you've seen most recently? Let's go back a year before the ceasefire was in place.
I think we're seeing a lot of civilian casualties, and we're seeing a lot of civilian casualties across the board. Only the other day, we treated 2 young women in the south of the country who'd been injured in an airstrike. One of them had bilateral lower limb amputations and came in with her foot lying on the stretcher. Her foot was sectioned, and her friend came in with an unstable femoral fracture and her thigh was slowly filling up with fluid. And so we're seeing really very heavy civilian casualties, basically because the weapons being used by Israel are landing in very dense urban areas where you have a high concentration of population. So that is one specific problem that is really, it's more than a problem, it's absolutely unacceptable, but the loss of civilian life is quite heavy. And Lebanon saw something similar in 24, also in 2006, but it isn't always like this, and certainly this war is lasting a long time now.
No doubt. And of course, Israel will say that they are targeting Hezbollah fighters who have immersed themselves among the population. Just give us a sense of the reality, though, when these warnings do come in from the IDF to evacuate. How feasible is that? Where do civilians go?
Well, one of the problems is these warnings. So the attacks, for example, last week came without any warning here in Beirut. I was actually sitting here in the Doctors Without Borders office, and we could see the strikes. And so some of the strikes happen without warning. So if you're whatever the target that Israel's aiming at, if you're walking in the street or if you happen to be in that building and the building collapses on you, your chances of survival are quite slim. So that's one problem. Then you have these huge areas that have been ordered, that are under orders from Israel to be evacuated, including everything that's south of the Litani River. We're talking about 500,000 people. And so you have 1.1 to 1.2 million displaced, creating huge pressure. And a lot of these people don't know if they'll ever go back home because they've been told, including by Israeli ministers, that their villages are going to be turned into rubble like Gaza was. So that's really weighing on people beyond their living conditions. Is where will they be living in the coming months and years?
Yeah, and I'm going to discuss that with my next guest, Israel Defense Minister Katz, stating that Israel will destroy homes in the Lebanese border villages, explicitly citing the destruction that we saw in the war with Gaza, in Gaza. You mentioned last Wednesday, and that was, I believe, the largest attack that Israel had conducted since Hezbollah launched its war with Israel this past month, following Israel and the United States launching its attacks on Iran. Just tell us about that day. I'm curious to hear, given your proximity, this was, I believe, 100 strikes in just 10 minutes' time. What did that feel like? What did that sound and look like?
Well, it created a huge sense of shock and worry. So people are used to a strike here and there in Beirut, which is already bad enough, you can imagine. And then at that moment, totally unannounced, over 100 strikes. So you could hear the city being hit. There was smoke, on many different areas, and everybody just grabbed their phones and tried to see if their family members were safe. And so everybody here in the office, my Lebanese colleagues, jumped on their phone. People were very emotional and very worried. The hospitals were overloaded. They did the best they could. Many of the bodies were hard to identify. Also, in some cases, you had entire families killed. So you didn't have any survivors to identify the body. And we had tragic cases in Sour in the south. We had a 7-year-old girl who came into the hospital injured and crying. All her family members, we later discovered 7 of her family members were buried under the rubble. And actually, we've had people on that day, who'd seen the ceasefire during the night, and they thought the war would be over, and ordinary Lebanese civilians started returning. Some went home, and we had several cases of families who were injured or wounded or killed, actually going home to the south thinking the war was over, but they were met with continued destruction.
I want to play sound from one Lebanese man grappling with the war, who I think speaks for a large portion of the population that is angry at obviously Israel for the strikes, angry at Hezbollah for dragging Lebanon once again into a war that Lebanese people and civilians don't want. Listen to what he said.
There's something unbelievable. Destruction, very massive destruction. I mean, even someone who isn't afraid would become afraid. I feel fear and anxiety. Where is this country headed? What are we going to do with our lives? Where are we staying and where are we going? No one knows what's going to happen. We have children, livelihoods, property. People want to live. Enough. We've had enough war.
Christopher, is that what you're hearing from those around you, those civilians?
There's certainly a war weariness, and there's a lot of uncertainty and fear about what tomorrow holds. And one of their main concerns, again, is will they be able to go home, especially for the displaced here, the hundreds of thousands who are piling up in Beirut in very unsanitary, terrible conditions. They have nothing to do. They're stuck in collective buildings, in schools, in tents on the beach, which is also a concern because if there's an airstrike, if you're in a tent, then there's no wall to protect you. And really they're hoping for peace, certainly, but they're really hoping to be able to go back home. And the doctors working in the hospitals are also hoping to go back home because many of them now live in these hospitals, as I mentioned, and barely see their families because it's so dangerous to move in and out of hospitals, especially in the south.
What exactly is needed in terms of aid? We know the WHO is warning of escalating food insecurities. We're seeing prices continue to rise for a number of reasons. Obviously, we've got conflicts that's impacting the price of commodities and energy and gas and oil. We've seen a spike in vegetable prices of over 20%, bread 17%, all of this since March, early March 2nd, just a few weeks ago. How is that impacting getting those supplies to you?
Well, I can speak to as a medical organization, what we're seeing on the ground, the general medical situation. And for example, I was in Ghana yesterday, which is not far from the Israeli front line as they're moving forward. And the doctors there, basically there's no electricity. So they're running their hospital, their small emergency departments. They've had to close most of the hospital on a generator. Fuel prices have gone through the roof, so we're going to help them there. It's hard for them even to get oxygen tanks down there because oxygen tanks also present certain risks. So the problems are really piling on and multiplying. And I would say when it comes to the medical system, they're under huge stress. Lebanon has tried to have a generous approach and say that the displaced and the wounded would get free care. Which is good, but these hospitals are already in a really bad economic situation with all the displaced, etc. So healthcare is very much both in danger, also from the direct strikes. Lots of ambulances have been hit.
Yeah.
So it's really quite a catastrophic situation, particularly in the south, I would say, of the country.
Christopher Stokes, thank you so much for joining the show and painting this stark reality that so many there are now facing. We appreciate the time. Well, as diplomacy takes center stage in Washington, the IDF is pushing further into southern Lebanon. Israel says that it expects to take full control of Bint Jbeil after days engaging in direct fighting with Hezbollah. Israel has previously said that it would establish a so-called security buffer zone in southern Lebanon until the conflict ends. For more on what Israel's ultimate strategy here is, I'm joined by Amos Harel from Israel. He's a military analyst for Haaretz and a regular on this program. Amos, it's good to have you back on. I know you were able to listen to part of that conversation in terms of the destruction there in southern Lebanon and its impact on civilians. And I know that for those that live in northern Israel, their own stability and safety and being able to return to their homes is paramount for Israel and their security too. My question to you is, when you hear about the level and as you report about the level of destruction, the strikes that we just saw last week, 100 strikes in just 10 minutes time, Israel continuing to move inland here. Why is this approach by the IDF? Why do they think this will be different than past wars with Hezbollah?
It's not only the approach of the IDF, it's the general mood in the country, I would say. Israelis, after October 7th, treat security threats differently. And this is what Prime Minister Netanyahu is counting on. The whole attitude is that Israel is proactive, that Israel takes charge of events and it initiates attacks in order to prevent threats from becoming more dangerous. The IDF itself, it's under a lot of pressure from the population in the north. You may recall that Israel won the previous round in late 24. There was a ceasefire achieved after quite a victory over Hezbollah. So the residents were promised that things would slow down, calm down, and that they could get back to their homes. Once the second war with Iran began, once Hezbollah resumed launching rockets, the reality proved quite different. And then there's also the pressure from the politicians. Netanyahu's government is, as I said, quite hawkish about almost everything. And the demand from the generals is to make this thing disappear. The army knows one solution, which is apply more pressure, apply more military power in order to solve things. Unfortunately, it isn't working too well. On the one hand, there's a lot of suffering. Your previous interview has mentioned that. There's also quite a lot of suffering on the Israeli side. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, Hezbollah is not going to surrender anytime soon. We see Hezbollah willing to fight, although it lost hundreds, if not 1,000 or more of its fighters since the war was resumed.
Right. This was supposed to be a weekend Hezbollah. As you noted, Israel came out the victor of the last war between these two sides, and yet Hezbollah is still capable of firing rockets into northern Israel. Amos, this brings me to these historic talks taking place now in Washington, D.C., the first high-level direct talks between Israeli officials and Lebanese officials in some 40 years. Is there an opportunity here for real diplomacy?
It's historic. It's significant. I'm not sure that I'd be too hopeful about the results. Again, we both remember that in 82, 83, a peace agreement was signed between Israel and the government, the Lebanese government at that time. It was never implemented. What we have now, of course, is on the one hand, a general willingness on behalf of the government and the military in Beirut to restrain Hezbollah and perhaps help dismantle some more of its weapons. But yet Hezbollah remains quite a force politically in Lebanon, and it's quite clear that the army and the government are afraid of Hezbollah. So Israel is doing this because this is what President Trump asked Prime Minister Netanyahu to do. There are not too many hopes that this would end with a diplomatic solution, but a lot of this depends on what goes on in the Gulf. If a ceasefire, a long-term ceasefire is reached in the Gulf, then we will see Israel restrained in Lebanon as well. Already, apparently the president told the prime minister to stop bombings in Beirut and in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. Most of the fighting now goes on in southern Lebanon. I think we see signs that this could end. I'm not sure with a final diplomatic solution, but this could end if the war in Iran stops as well. But this is a proxy war. In the end, the focus is on the Gulf. And if there's a breakthrough, a diplomatic breakthrough there, then things might calm down a bit in Lebanon as well.
So are these direct negotiations, and I'm referencing both those in Washington and perhaps those that will be restarted in Pakistan, in Islamabad, as soon as later this week, are they being directed solely by Washington here? And I'm wondering what the implications are for Israel, given that they impact two wars that Israel is currently conducting, that with Hezbollah in Lebanon and that with Iran. Is Israel at the table seriously, or no?
Not so much. I think what we see here now is diminishing Israeli influence over what happens. You're familiar, of course, with the New York Times story last week about Netanyahu influencing the Trump decision. They met in February 11th of this year at the White House, and it was evidently the prime minister who persuaded the president to go forward with the plan to attack Iran. There were also a lot of hopes about Israel and specifically Mossad delivering more of an attempt of a regime change in Iran. As we know, this didn't work out so well, but at that time, Netanyahu was extremely influential over Trump decisions. I'm not sure that this is the situation right now. Israel by now is a sort of a subcontractor for the Americans regarding strikes in Iran. It fights its own war in Lebanon, but I think that most of the decisions will be taken in Washington at the White House and not so much at the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem.
And we heard the Prime Minister just yesterday say that he speaks with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance had been calling him and relaying every single update of these negotiations. I'm just wondering how much of that was posturing for his domestic audience at home versus really believing that both the United States and Israel's priorities are being addressed in these talks. The U.S. apparently is offering a 20-year period of no enrichment, and Iran came back with 5 years. But even getting there, it shows that negotiations are happening. Is Israel on board with some middle ground that they could potentially agree to?
I'm sure he's getting the updates. Netanyahu talks to Vance. He talks constantly to President Trump and especially the people around him, like Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff. But on the other hand, I'm not so sure that the Israeli position is considered at this moment. It's quite evident from here, that the Prime Minister wants the war to be resumed. This is all the leaks we're getting from Jerusalem are that the war should at one point continue. And on the other hand, that he's not making the decisions anymore, that it's about American interests first and foremost. We'll have to see how this evolves. But of course, Israel would like the attitude towards the Iranians to be as hawkish as possible, and would like the Americans to make strict demands of Iran regarding any kind of a long-term solution, most specifically regarding the nuclear plan, but also about ballistic missiles. And Netanyahu, you mentioned posturing earlier. Netanyahu is having a very hard time bridging this gap because what he promised to the Israeli people is quite far from what he actually achieved. The first day the war broke on February 28th, he briefed journalists that this is about regime change and this is about destruction of the two main threats from Iran, the nuclear project and the ballistic missile plan. Now, all of these things have not been achieved yet. What we have now is a ceasefire, quite a lot of damage, of course, created in Iran, but this hasn't destroyed the Iranian regime and it hasn't defeated Iran, contrary to what Netanyahu promised Trump to do a few weeks before the war started.
And that's starting to be reflected in polling as well. Nadav Eyal actually highlighted a brutal new INSS poll that showed only 31% of Israelis believe the Iranian regime was significantly harmed, and nearly three-quarters expect to be back at war within a year's time. Trust in the government is sitting at 30%. Amos, I don't have to tell you about what life has been like for Israelis the past month, the past 3 years, actually constantly in and out of bomb shelters, constantly at war. Israel has long been described as being tactically strong, strategically weak. Do Israelis feel, after 3 years of war, that they are in a safer position right now? What is the mood like after October 7th with this new doctrine, as you noted, of being more proactive in targeting and striking potential attacks ahead of time? Do Israelis feel that they're safer?
So the polls you've mentioned, the mistrust is quite clear. People do not trust the government, and people are having a hard time believing that the government is achieving what it claims it has achieved already. This hasn't been translated into political loss to Netanyahu. According to the polls, we're quite steady. The opposition is leading in the polls, but it doesn't seem to be a decisive victory. And of course, the elections are supposed to be held for the next Knesset in late October of this year. When we talk about strategic wins, then again, it's hard for the government right now to explain its position. What we hear from Netanyahu's mouthpieces, and as you know, he's very good at political campaigns, and he's very good at operating political spin. But what we hear from them is that these are great times for Israel. Netanyahu is constantly mentioning that he created free security zones, one in Gaza, one in the Golan Heights on the Syrian side, and one in Lebanon. He's actually, according to him, widening the borders of Israel for the first time since the Six-Day War of 1967. And he's also announced that Israel is now not only a regional power, but, quote, unquote, almost a world superpower. Now, does Netanyahu himself believe that? The people around him keep mentioning that, but I'm not so sure that Israelis are convinced, especially as we go up and down those stairs to the bomb shelters constantly. It's hard to believe that we've won this as the war goes on, at least with Lebanon, and we still don't know, of course, what would happen with Iran.
Yeah, perhaps he views Israel as a superpower, but you know how Israel is viewed by a number of other Western countries. They have consistently been criticizing how Israel has conducted itself, and I guess the biggest concern now is Israel's relationship going forward with the United States and Washington in particular. Amos Harel, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Bianca.
And do stay with CNN. We'll be right back after the break.
Nuclear to me is a vastly superior energy source than everything out there, including fossil systems. It will, I think, inevitably replace those, but it's going to take some time, just given the dominance that oil and gas have had. And I think if you talk to folks, even in the oil and gas side, who see the sort of and understand the actual energy physics, they wouldn't disagree with that. And that's why you see some of them getting involved in nuclear, because it's like, all right, this is maybe the multi-decadal or even century scale, but that's where we're going to go.
I'm Bill Weir in Greenland, and this is CNN.
I'm David Culver in Wuhan, China.
CNN Seoul,
Hong Kong,
Istanbul,
in Athens, Greece,
in Copenhagen, Denmark,
in London, and this is CNN.
Right next to a still raging war with far less global attention. This week marks 3 years of brutal civil war in Sudan with staggering levels of bloodshed. At least 150,000 people have been killed and 33 million are in need of assistance there, with harrowing reports of sexual violence and the killing of children. Hunger, displacement, and death are now the daily reality in Sudan. In an article for the Financial Times, Sudanese entrepreneur and philanthropist Mo Ibrahim warns that what happens in Sudan will not stay in Sudan. He joins me now from Monaco. Mo Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining the program. As we've noted and covered this war now so many years into it, the numbers are staggering. 14 million displaced, 4 million sheltering abroad. Beyond just those headlines, we like to begin by asking all of our guests, what is the current reality on the ground right now for civilians?
For civilians, I mean, it is harrowing. The two fighting groups, RSF, Sudanese Army, and the RSF and the Sudanese Army are both control most of the country, but there is a lot of other militias which also control other parts. It's becoming a lawless land, actually. The fragmentation of the country is a reality now. It's terrible, and food shortage, lack of health care, disease, etc. Sexual violence prevailing is a nightmare.
A nightmare, and you depict that so thoughtfully and poignantly in your piece for the FT. And as you noted, what happens in Sudan will not stay in Sudan. With so many fragile neighbors there in the Horn of Africa, what are the immediate risks of this spreading throughout the region?
Yeah, Sudan shares borders with 7 other countries. Most of these countries are already fragile countries. And the problem also is that some of these countries support one side or the other side, logistics, arms, etc. And the situation in Sudan can undermine what is going on around us. Take, for example, Eritrea and Egypt. Both are our neighbors. They support the army. Ethiopia, which has not really is not really in good terms with Eritrea or Egypt, of course, is pushed to support the RSF. Ethiopia also got borders with us. We can end up with a proxy war there between all those people. And there is also much danger beyond our own neighbors. If you just look at the map, you will see an incredible, huge arc of lawless lands, ungovernable spaces, extend through the Sahel from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. And this is a huge problem, not only for Africa, it's also for Europe, because this is like, as I said, like Afghanistan and Syria together as a doorstep of Europe.
Yeah, and
this is a major problem for everybody.
And we're looking at a map right now, and you see the contagion that is quite possible, and you see the fact that it is so near one of the other hotspots in the world, one of the hot wars going on right now, and that is the war in Iran and the impact that this is having on global energy markets, prices on everything from oil, gas, and commodities. Fertilizer also being impacted. Just talk about how that then trickles into this conflict and making it that much more difficult to get humanitarian aid on the ground.
Right. I mean, Sudan have a very long shore on the Red Sea. Red Sea now is acquiring a heightened strategic importance, given what is happening in the Gulf, and it is a problem because the safety of navigation and it will be threatened. But then you have also the migration threat. If you remember, 1 million refugees almost undermined the government of Chancellor Merkel in Germany. And that was Syria. Now, you have much more than that next door, really. And that can undermine many democratic rules in Europe. So you have the migration problem, you have the navigation, freedom of navigation problem, and of course you have the humanitarian crisis.
And you have countries like UAE.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say you have countries like UAE, Iran, Turkey only fueling the problem more, and you've called international mediation efforts half-hearted. Why do you think that more isn't being done on a collective level to bring this brutal war, this genocide, to an end?
Yeah, the problem is that a number of countries, neighbors and a little bit further, are supporting one side or another, looking for some narrow strategic interests in the aftermath if the side wins the war. It's a very narrow and stupid approach. And what happens is the flow of arms. Who's feeding this war? It is that flow of arms, bullets, and logistics, etc., drones. And who's doing that? There's 7 or 8 countries. You have Iran, you have Turkey, you have the Emirates, you have Egypt. It's just so many people involved there. And they're supporting this side or that side. So we don't have a consensus. And we need to get over that. We need to really stop all supply of weapons, drones, etc., to the combatants. Otherwise, this war will continue raging on. And I hope that U.S. can just pay some attention to what's going on there.
Yeah, you say we welcome your affection, but not your bullets and drones. Your foundation's African Leaders Prize, awarded for exceptional democratic governance, hasn't been given out for 5 years. Does that reflect sort of the broader crisis of democratic leadership in this moment?
In a way it is, because we have been witnessing some deterioration in the governance and in democracy. There is a democracy recession in Africa. We see different presidents now changing constitutions, staying for 3rd or 4th term. So you've seen people at 90 years old starting a 6th or 7th term. Narrowing the space, the space is shrinking for civil society. So Africa is not in a good place, unfortunately. So yes, we have been unable to give the prize, but it is not our fault, really. It is some other people's fault.
Well, your voice is so important now during this time of crisis, watching your country literally being torn apart. You continue to speak out, and that is so vital, and we are grateful for your time. Thank you, Mo Ibrahim.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane.
And we'll be right back after this short break. Next, Who Needs Friends? That's the title and subject of actor Andrew McCarthy's new book exploring male loneliness in America. As a member of the infamous Brat Pack of young actors from the 1980s, he starred in iconic films such as Pretty in Pink, one of my favorites, and the coming-of-age melodrama St. Elmo's Fire. Now he's taken a 10,000-mile road trip across 22 states to reconnect with old friends, and he tells Hari Srinivasan what he learned about human connection along the way.
Bianna, thanks. Andrew McCarthy, thanks so much for joining us. You have a new book out called Who Needs Friends? An unscientific examination of male friendships across America. In the beginning of the book, you say that this sort of started with maybe a snarky question from your older son, who was basically asking you, you don't really have any friends, do you, Dad? I mean, it's powerful what kids can do to us, but what did that trigger for you?
Well, yeah, we were sitting at the kitchen table. He was telling me a funny story about one of his friends, and then he finished his story and looked up and just said exactly that. You don't really have any friends, do you, Dad? And he didn't, I don't think he meant it too snarky. He was just speaking truth as far as he knew it, the way our kids do to us, you know?
Yeah.
Constantly keep us humble and or humiliated. And it just got me thinking and stayed with me. I said to him, I said, Sammy, yeah, you know, I do have friends. I just don't see them, but I know they're there, and that's enough. And he kind of went, okay. But that comment stayed with me. And a couple days later, I just said out loud to the empty kitchen, I said, you know what? It's not enough. I need to go see my friends. And I'm like many guys, I think, who, when I was left home at 17, came to the city and had this sort of core group of guys who became my chosen family. And, you know, they largely became responsible for me becoming who I've become. And through life and jobs and families, whatever, they scattered across the country. And I hadn't seen any of them in years, some of them in decades. And so my son's sort of comment made me go, I need to see these dudes.
So this launched what turned out to be a 22 state, 10,000-mile road trip that was kind of zigging and zagging. You write in the book, when you were taking this tour, what had actually happened to my friendships? Were they still there as I claimed? Did I even want them or need them? What did I get from them anyway? What did I have to offer them? How did friendship affect my place in the world? What did I value? What mattered? Those are all really big questions. What did you find?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I drove 10,000 miles because I hate highway driving. I'm terrified of trucks like on the highway. So I just drove back roads the entire country, which was an amazing thing to rediscover America like that again. But what I found really interesting was I started talking to men as I went. I started talking to random men I would approach in gas stations or on the street or in motel lobbies or something. And I started talking to them about their friendships. So besides just reconnecting with my old friends, I started talking to men of all walks of life, cops and blues musicians and oil rig workers and all sorts of guys. And it was amazing because although all of them looked at me like I was insane when I first kind of walked up to them and said, will you talk to me about your friends? You know, they kind of said, huh? But then not a single guy refused to talk to me. They were all, and invariably everybody pretty much said, I've never talked about this before. I never talk about this stuff. So it's fascinating to talk about. So I had amazing conversations with men who were very open to me all across the country. And, you know, I found a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation. I also found a lot of deep sort of connection and fellowship between men. And, it's a topic that we don't deal with. I guess the biggest thing I found is a topic that we just don't deal with very much, and to our own detriment.
The juxtaposition throughout the book of how many men and some women all know this, that we don't deal with this well. In fact, they even point out, oh, my wife, my girlfriend, oh, she's got great friends. She's really connected. And you're just like, wait, what's the gap here? Why is that gap where when we can see how healthy relationships are nurtured and formed and how people communicate, what were the reasons that you found that men weren't?
You're right. You say a lot of guys I met said, yeah, my wife is my best friend, but I'm not hers. Oh. A lot, right? And a lot of guys let their wives, you know, schedule all their social life. But I think guys, it comes down to, you know, they're cliches, but I think it's true that men have a fear of sort of admitting vulnerability because vulnerability can be misconstrued somehow as weakness. And the one thing a man can't be in our culture today is weak, right? Mm-hmm. And manhood has sort of evolved since sort of post-World War II John Wayne era. A man in America certainly has become someone who's stoic, hard, pull your hat down, carry your own water, just shut up and get it done and bring it on. You know, and that's not always the way it used to be with friendship and with men in America. Back in the 19th century, you know, Abraham Lincoln and Joshua Speed were dear friends. There's lots of examples of men writing these profuse, affectionate letters to each other. There's a lot of physical affection, you know, so the idea of friendship in America changed in men, changed somewhere in the last 100 years to a really sort of narrow focus. And I think to our detriment, because I think it's just very isolating.
You know, all the kind of longevity research points to the fact of how important social connection is. And there are groups of men who are getting together, whether it's in a formalized setting or informal. They're actually practicing this thing that now is being advocated, which is that you should have connections and relationships and feel useful and purposeful. And so many of the places that you describe, it's like this was now part of their schedule, part of their ritual of life.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think one of the statistics I talk about in the book is Harvard just recently concluded an 85-year study saying the single most important thing needed for a longer, healthier, happier life is not a good job or physical health, but connection to community. You know, and everywhere I went, I would often hang out I'd go to these small towns and local diners in the morning. And I discovered breakfast is the most optimistic meal of the day in America. And just you go hang out in a diner and you park yourself there for a while and you'll see the whole world go by. And you know, there was one place in Elkins, West Virginia, I went, and it was a diner, and in the center of the room there was this table of about 8 guys, 8 to 10 guys actually, and it was the big table in the middle of the room, and it was just older guys with their mesh caps on, their Carhartt jackets, and they're just sitting there, and one would get up, another guy would come fill his spot, and I asked the people sitting next, I was watching them, fascinated, and I asked the people at the next table, I said, is that the Brain Trust over there? And the lady said to me, she goes, yeah, well, they'd like to think so. But then she said exactly what you're speaking to. She goes, at least they've got each other. And I think that's exactly it. You know, they just come there. These guys are going to see each other tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. They just have a place to go and connect with and not feel so isolated. And I think there's just so much isolation. You know, I asked pretty much everybody, every man I met along the way, I said, you ever feel lonely? And young guys were very quick to kind of go, oh, yeah, I'm lonely a lot. And older guys would invariably say, no, too busy, never feel lonely. And, you know, I know when I answer that quick and that sharp, it's either something I'm afraid of or I'm lying. And, but again, I think the admission of loneliness is tantamount to admitting weakness, you know, so people just pull back on that. And then that keeps us further isolated. I think it's pretty simple. And yet it's something that's so prevalent and something we have fallen prey to, you know.
You know, the inverse is also true, that the loneliness is so bad for your health, right? I mean, you point out statistics that say it's basically worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And as you mentioned, it says there was a study, it was 2021 State of the American Friendship Report. Only 27% of men said they had 6 or more close friends, and 15% said they had none.
No close friends at all. Yeah, that's up from 3% in 1990. So, I mean, we're going the wrong direction for sure. And yeah, there's also, 50% risk increase of dementia for people that are isolated and lonely. I think a 38% risk of increase of heart disease. So it's not just like, oh, loneliness is sad. It's like, no, it's physically affecting our health. And like you alluded to, it's equivalent to, I think, 15 cigarettes a day and 6 alcoholic drinks a day. So, I mean, it's really something that, we ought to be addressing besides just feeling sort of bad about it.
Our audience might, depending on their age, might not remember the movies that you were in, and you were called part of this club called the Brat Pack in the 80s. And you had kind of your own struggles with fame, and that you weren't really ready. It was sort of thrust upon you. And then you write about the fact that you actively kind of withdrew, and it might have also contributed to, alcoholism and kind of different stages of your life that were difficult. What would you kind of tell yourself maybe at that point in your life about friendships and how important they would be 40 years from now?
You alluded to being in the Brat Pack and all that stuff and that time in life. And it was kind of a wondrous, sort of exciting time, but I did feel sort of very overwhelmed. And had I known, I retreated very much from that because I'm a fairly introverted person in certain ways. So had I sort of latched on to my peeps in a stronger way, I think I might have navigated through that easier, because it's just good to get out of our heads. There's a lot of nonsense goes on up there when we don't sort of blow it off. You need a friend to kind of go, hey, wait a minute, dude, what are you thinking? I was on the trip and my wife said, how's Matthew? I reconnected with my buddy in Kentucky. She said, how's Matthew? I said, he's great. I said, what are you doing? I said, just stupid stuff. And that's good. You need to do more stupid stuff. I go, sweetheart, I think I do a lot of stupid stuff. And she said, yeah, but you need to do the stupid stuff so you don't do the really stupid stuff. I really understood what that meant, you know. I think we just need to sort of connect. I think it's whether male or female, although women seem to be much better at it in many ways than men. I think guys tend to be, you know, I heard a line, I've stolen it, that women make friends face to face, guys make friends shoulder to shoulder. You know, it's something in that with guys. You know, you hear men, I met a bunch of men from the military and stuff along my way, and they all talk about how, you know, obviously that's a very bonding experience for guys. And I think that's really true, that often with guys, we need to be sort of engaged in kind of an activity. I met one guy along the way, said he had a real hard time telling his daughter, his teenage daughter, that he loved her, but he thought nothing of jumping in the car and driving her 8 hours back to college. You know what I mean? The action is demonstration of love for guys, I think, in a very real way. We feel safe in that. We know how to find ourselves in action.
Yeah, there's a passage you have with I can't remember. I think it's Marfa, Texas, where he talks about get in the truck, friends. You know, like the guys who just get in the truck and drive, no questions asked. If you ever and most men are like that. We value loyalty a tremendous amount. It's like, who's really going to have my back for me? You have a quote from Epicurus. It's not so much our friends' help that helps us as the confident knowledge that they will help us. We value that so much that we're like, well, the small, I mean, you know, we kind of minimize the actual maintenance of that relationship and the words that go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the things why my friendship sort of slipped away, because I just knew, and I did know, even if I hadn't seen him in a decade, I call up Ed and go, dude, I need help. He's there. You know what I mean? But the active managing and involvement in friendship, it does something different too. Besides that sort of get in the truck quality, as I drove across America and meeting all these guys and reuniting with my friends, I felt sort of like this emotional safety net spread out underneath me in a certain way, in a way that I didn't realize I'd been missing all these years. I feel like many guys feel this great obligation to provide in life, whether it comes from, you know, the caveman and bringing the saber-toothed tiger back into the cave or what. This notion that we need to provide, that's what we do. And I think a lot of men's self-esteem rises and falls on the degree to which we feel we're providing well, you know. And I have talked about this with my wife, and she'll go, oh, sweetheart, we're in this together, you know, and she's absolutely right and everything. But I mention it to my guy friends, and they just go, I said, do you ever feel this? And they're like, oh, yeah, of course. It's like the biggest thing in my life. So just that sort of, without talking about it any further, just that identification and understanding of that, you know, it's not that support's better than my wife's. It just, as my kids say, it just hits different. You know what I mean? And so I think we need both those kind of things.
Throughout the story, you're kind of one of those get in the truck kind of friends for a friend of yours, Sevi. And, you know, you get to his apartment in Baltimore and you haven't seen him in years. And you describe what was happening. What did you not know?
Well, my friend Sevi had terrible back pain and stenosis and narrowing of the spine. So he had to have a massive, you know, one of those 8-hour back operations, and it just didn't work. And so this wildly extroverted guy had become sort of largely a shut-in just because he physically wasn't able to maneuver. And I walked in and you know, he canceled on me a few times. And I was maybe being melodramatic to myself, but I thought, I don't want the next time I see my friend to be at his funeral. I'm going to his house. So I just got in the car and I just drove to his house and just knocked on his door unannounced. And, you know, he opened the door and kind of went, dude. In that way that guys do, that dude contained a lot of ominous things in it. And anyway, his apartment was largely cluttered with all these Amazon delivery boxes and things. And I like really cluttered, like there was no room for anything else. And it was just in that instant, I realized, wow, his world has become very small. But I also thought instantly that these sort of all these boxes, I'm like, what is this? And that it was really sort of an act of hope, like clicking buy now for all these little things. We're just like, when my life gets back on its feet, I'm going to need all this stuff. You know what I mean? So, but again, he had just gotten isolated through the course of life. Stuff happens to all of us in life. We have our moments, you know, and he just needed, and I just showed up. You know, I learned a lot on the trip, but the thing I learned the most of anything was just, you know, that cliche, 90% of life is showing up. Just show up. You know, I didn't do anything right on this trip. I'm no expert on friendship. I'm no expert on any of this stuff. All I know is I showed up. I got in the car and I drove and I went to see him. You know, and there's something Aristotle talks about, the 3 levels of friendship, and the deepest level, what he called a perfect friendship, is two friends, you know, two friends are improved by the relationship, and they are able also to name the import of the relationship to each other. You know, I'd show up at my friend's house and he'd say, "You drove all this way to see me?" And I was just like, "Dude, you know what? You're important in my life. You mean a lot to me, and I just needed to come see you." And to which they were able to reciprocate that. You know, when we were younger, we probably never would have said that to each other.
Author and actor Andrew McCarthy. The book is called Who Needs Friends? An Unscientific Examination of Male Friendships Across America. Thanks so much for your time.
No, thank you.
And finally for us, the pride flag will officially fly again at the Stonewall National Monument. The Trump administration agreed in a court settlement Monday. It was removed earlier this year on a government directive, and hundreds took to the street to protest. A group of nonprofits also fought back, filing a lawsuit saying the removal violated federal law. The monument celebrates the Stonewall Inn, an iconic Manhattan bar considered the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ rights movement in America. An important day for them. Well, that is it for now. Thank you so much. If you ever miss our show, you can find the latest episode shortly after it airs on our podcast. And remember, you can always catch us online, on our website, and all over social media. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye from New York.
The biggest games have a few 100 million players and fans, which is already big. But gaming overall is at 3.4 billion players. This is the entertainment of the 21st century. There's no kid out there who's not playing video games. So even though it's big, right, it's $200 billion business in 2026, it's even just to start. This is going to go much further.
I'm David Culver in Wuhan, China.
CNN Seoul,
Hong Kong.
Istanbul.
In Athens, Greece.
In Copenhagen, Denmark.
In London, and this is CNN.
For World Sport, I'm Coy Wire. This is CNN.
is this moment that we are in? Does it sound to you that we're on the verge of a potentially dramatic escalation?
Aaron Burnett out front, weekdays on CNN.
I'm Patrick Ottman in Havana. This is CNN.
Hello and welcome to our viewers joining us here in the United States and all around the world. I am Brian Abel in Washington, where it is 5 a.m.
And I'm Becky Anderson, live from our Middle East programming hub in Abu Dhabi, where it is 1 p.m. And we begin with the very latest developments on a potential second round of US-Iran peace talks. President Donald Trump teasing that something could be happening over the next 2 days, his words, as the two countries try to hammer out a deal. According to a US official, quote, future talks are under discussion, but nothing has been scheduled at this time. Well, Tehran, for its part, says it will continue participating in talks despite believing Washington is, quote, not trustworthy. Well, sources tell CNN that Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to lead those talks if they take place, and Vance himself says he is committed to fighting for the grand bargain, as he describes it, that Donald Trump wants with Tehran.
I'd say in Pakistan, we made a ton of progress. But the reason why the deal is not yet done is because the president, he really wants a deal where Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, Iran is not state sponsoring terrorism, but also the people of Iran can thrive and prosper and join the world economy. I think the people we're sitting across from wanted to make a deal, and I know the President of the United States told us to go out there and negotiate in good faith. That's what we did. That's what we're going to keep on doing.
Well, that's the latest from J.D. Vance. All this as the U.S. military says it is continuing to blockade Iranian ports in the Persian Gulf. But tracking data does show multiple Iran-linked ships have transited the Strait of Hormuz since that blockade started. Meantime, the Pakistani Prime Minister is set to visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Turkey in a push to, quote, promote peace efforts in the region. All right, let's do a deep dive on this. CNN's Nick Robertson joining us live from Islamabad, where, of course, those US-Iran talks took place over the weekend. Nick, what do we know at this point?
I think what we know is that 2 days to get talks going wherever they would be unrealistic from a logistical perspective, and that's what we hear from our sources. And I think from the other point of view, President Trump does seem to now have lent into Pakistan as being the venue, Islamabad here as being the venue if and when those talks happen. And that was sort of in question because yesterday there was sort of rumors floating around that J.D. Vance had traveled 17 hours to get to Pakistan. The Iranian delegation had traveled a couple of hours. That sort of was disadvantageous to the U.S. So there was talk about a middle ground, a middle location, possibly somewhere in Europe. So the president does seem to have settled it on Pakistan. And there does seem to be an element of willingness here. And I think it's fair to say behind the scenes, efforts still are underway. Talks are underway behind the scenes to try to bring the two sides together. J.D. Vance left saying he'd put the United States' best and final offer on the table. So the ball was in the Iranian court. And at the moment, we're not hearing the Iranians saying, we're not coming. I think what the sense that we're getting is, again, people are in discussion. They're preparing to come back, both sides. You know, there was that real sense at the weekend that they did come close, that there was a lot of understanding. The Iranian side criticized the U.S. side for moving the goalposts at the last minute. Things were agreed, and then at the last minute changes were made, and that's why things fell down. In fact, you know, talking to sources here, there was a real sense that in the early hours of the morning, on Sunday morning, there was almost a point where a signature was going to happen. That didn't happen. Precise reasons we don't know, but perhaps around the perceived moving of the goalposts. But J.D. Vance and his team have been very, very clear that it's their nuclear aspirations of Iran to have a weapon that the United States absolutely categorically wants to get very clear and wants steps to be taken that will make that impossible. What are those precise steps and what are the precise steps that the Iranians would agree to is unclear. That seems to be the stumbling point. But, you know, you're talking here about the removal of of that highly enriched uranium dust that's trapped under mountains. The talk is about, the possibility of centrifuges or what they contain, and the ability and the commitment not to, not to make highly enriched uranium, which puts the pathway to a nuclear weapon so much closer. Becky?
Understood. Good to have you, Nick. Nick is in Islamabad. Well, Israeli and Lebanese officials have agreed to hold more direct talks following Tuesday's meeting at the State Department. Now, Lebanon called for territorial sovereignty and a ceasefire to alleviate the humanitarian crisis caused by this current conflict. And while Israel conceded both sides were on the same page on the Iran-backed group Hezbollah, Israel refusing to commit to a ceasefire. Well, the Lebanese health ministry says Israeli strikes killed at least 35 people in the past 24 hours and an estimate of 2,100 people or more killed since March the 2nd. Officials believe that includes more than 160 kids and nearly 90 health workers. Well, despite diplomatic efforts, many Lebanese people displaced by the conflict believe their future is bleak.
The current situation is hopeless. We don't see any glimmer of hope for the future.
What the view of those who are displaced, perhaps? On Tuesday, I spoke with Salah El-Machnouk, who is a lecturer in comparative politics at Lebanon's University of St. Joseph and a non-fellow resident with the Middle East Institute. He's an influential voice in Lebanon. He's lived there all his life. And I asked him whether there is enough support from the international community for a ceasefire in Lebanon, what his sort of sense is at this point. Have a listen to his response.
I think prior to talking about the technicalities and the logistics of what Lebanon needs, we need to have a proper understanding of the problem. Lebanon does need a ceasefire, but Lebanon needs a permanent ceasefire. Lebanon needs a security agreement with Israel that makes sure that not every couple of years, I'm a young person, but this is the 6th war between a Lebanese paramilitary group and Israel in my lifetime. The last war happened only 15 months ago, and here it is being renewed. So simply asking for a ceasefire that probably will ensure another round of fighting in a year or 2 or 3 or 5 is not the ideal way to go. We need a permanent solution to this problem. And EU powers, Great Britain, the United States, the Arabs, and others need to put together a comprehensive framework whereby we ensure that Lebanese sovereignty is respected both by Israel and Iran. And we need to square this circle, Becky. We need to make sure that this is the last war in our lifetime. Peace might be a long way to go, but I think in the meantime, we need a security agreement. We need the Lebanese state enabled and empowered politically, diplomatically, economically, and vis-a-vis the military to make sure it can establish full sovereignty in a way that doesn't ensure, on the other hand, that another war breaks out in 1 or 2 or 3 years.
Okay, to note, not at the table, of course, in Washington, the Iran-backed Hezbollah. Joining me now to explore what really does lie ahead for Israel and Lebanon is Yazid Sayed. He's senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former Palestinian negotiator. A day after Israel and Lebanon held these first direct talks in decades, Hezbollah launched around 30 rockets into Israel. What's the message Hezbollah is sending there? And what do you make of what you've heard out of this sort of first session in Washington?
Well, it's clear that Hezbollah is opposed to any kind of peace deal with Israel or a security arrangement between Lebanon and Israel that confirms Israeli demands for the disarmament of Hezbollah. Hezbollah refuses to disarm. There is, of course, a domestic conversation to be had within Lebanon about how to separate or dissociate Hezbollah as a resistance movement from its claim to retain its arms. I mean, is there some other way of dealing with that? The real question, of course, here is, I mean, there's going to be a lot of negotiation through fire, both between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, as we have also seen in different forums between the United States and Iran in the Gulf.
there's going to be a lot of arm twisting. The crucial question is whether the Lebanese government has enough political space domestically to proceed with talks and to push for substantive understandings with Israel that allow what the Lebanese government crucially wants, which is to end the cycle of war. Sorry, go ahead.
Just listening to Saleh Machnouk, he would suggest, I'm sure, as will many, many people in Lebanon, that they give the Lebanese government, the space to deal with this. I mean, what do you make of, what we're hearing from some 80% of Lebanese society? They don't just want to see a ceasefire, a short-term truce. They want a permanent end to this. So what is this? Exactly. What is the next step?
Well, so what I think the Lebanese government is probably pushing for is exactly that, a permanent end to the cycle of war. This does necessarily mean building on the current isolation of Hezbollah within Lebanon. As you mentioned, a majority of Lebanese are either hostile or at least opposed to continuation of war. And that does mean a more definitive resolution of the question of Hezbollah's weapons. And I think the Lebanese government is trying to create the political space with American backing through negotiation directly with Israel to reach some kind of arrangement of that kind. Of course, there is a question about what Israel seeks, why, after initially ignoring the Lebanese offer of direct talks, why Prime Minister Netanyahu turned around and went for them. It'll be very interesting to see if that is simply a tactical buying of time with an eye to see what happens next in the Gulf, or whether Netanyahu will commit more realistically to a political process that will eventually result in the Lebanese government being able to assert its authority in Lebanon and reach some other kind of understanding with Hezbollah that ends its ability or readiness to fire rockets at Israel, not just temporarily, but permanently in the future.
The now Lebanese culture minister, Hassan Salami, said to Al Monitor in a podcast, quote, the idea that you can disarm just by making a couple of phone calls, checkpoints here and there, is just an illusion, he said. And I wonder what you think of that. I sat down with the European Council President, Antonio Costa, here in Abu Dhabi yesterday and discussed with him Europe's sort of position on these negotiations. Have a listen.
What can Europe do to ensure the success of these direct Israeli-Lebanese peace talks brokered by the US in Washington this week?
Well, we are cross fingers, but at the same time we are doing two important things. First, we are supporting the Lebanese army to give them, to build capabilities to do what they need to do.
Sufficient?
To have the effective control of the territory, to disarm Hezbollah. And on the other side, we are giving 100 million euros in humanitarian aid support for the Lebanese people.
Is Israel flouting international law at present in Lebanon?
Yes.
As they did, you say, in Gaza?
Yes. Unfortunately.
Look, France, Europe, not at the table at this point. But can European support pressure Israel into doing a deal?
I don't think that Europe, is able to exert sufficient political leverage on Israel. That goes to the United States administration, and it's clear that there's a far closer alignment of views between the United States administration and Israel on most regional issues. And I think the one crucial element that brings them together here with regard to Lebanon is that they're both determined to roll back Iranian influence under all circumstances, in addition to whatever else is agreed with regard to the Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, the Iranian nuclear program. Israel, I think, is determined to see an end to Iranian influence or hegemony in Lebanon. And I think that's where there is, in fact, an overlap with what the Lebanese government and much of Lebanese society wants. The end to the kind of being sort of hostage to Iran's strategic interests and its striving for deterrence against Israel by backing Hezbollah in Lebanon. They want to break in that sort of logic. So Europe, I think, can help in ways that, as we just heard, humanitarian assistance and so on to the Lebanese government, to the army. What may be a more important area for the Europeans to get involved in will be that no matter what degree of goodwill or good faith, let's say, there might be between Israel and Lebanon vis-a-vis a future peace and security arrangement for South Lebanon, there's going to be a complex arrangement, I think, where Israel will want certain security guarantees in the south of Lebanon in return for enabling economic revival. That's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be easy to monitor, but that may be where the Europeans in particular can come in terms of providing, sort of good ambassadors as well as economic assistance and security monitoring.
Yes, it's great to have you. Your perspective's so important. These are critical times. Thank you. And a note, Bloomberg reporting that the IMF and Lebanon are in talks for rapid financing, somewhere between $800 million and $1 billion. More on that as we get it. So let's get it back to Brian Abel now, who is in Washington with some of the other stories that we are following today. Brian.
A great nuanced assessment and conversation, Becky. Thank you. The resignations of now former U.S. Congressman Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez are now official. Swalwell, a Democrat, is facing several allegations of sexual misconduct, including now 2 allegations of rape. Gonzalez, a Republican from Texas, stepped down after he admitted back in March to an affair with a staffer. CNN's Manu Raju has the latest from Capitol Hill.
Congressman Eric Swalwell and Congressman Tony Gonzalez both resigning on Tuesday afternoon after separate scandals involving sexual misconduct came to light through press reports in 2 separate situations, but 2 very similar outcomes, both seeing their political careers implode. And in Eric Swalwell's case, also facing the prospects of separate criminal probes that could happen outside of Capitol Hill. But now that they have resigned, they have avoided expulsion votes that were certain to happen this week in the House of Representatives. It would require 2/3 majority in the House to expel either of them. It was possible it could have reached that threshold. Just 6 members in the history of Congress have ever been expelled from the United States House, and the question will be if there will be others who could join them. 2 other members of Congress facing their own ethical issues. Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus McCormick of Florida, a Democrat. There's also another Florida member, a Republican, Corey Mills, also facing pressure from their colleagues to resign or face potential expulsion votes. But it was the Swalwell case in particular that caused so many people by surprise, because Democrats viewed him as a very likely next governor of California. But after the San Francisco Chronicle and CNN detailed these allegations of sexual misconduct, allegations of rape, he has denied those allegations. That was enough to see his support collapse completely on Capitol Hill, and ultimately his decision to step aside. Tony Gonzalez, too, had decided to step out of his race, drop out for running for re-election in the House, but he did not face calls to resign from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who said that there should be an ethics investigation that should conclude first before deciding whether before he made a decision on whether to call on Gonzalez to resign. But members of the House reacting to this news as they came back after a 2-week session, making very clear that the culture on Capitol Hill needs to change.
Washington should be a place where we are elevating and acting with integrity. And I think it's what the American people expect. These are positions of profound privilege and a profound responsibility. And I think the most important thing right now is to center these women and their bravery in coming forward. There is such a punitive culture here in Washington that silences people who have been victims of abuse. And for them to do what they did takes a tremendous amount of bravery.
I think that they should have been expelled and not resigned. And I think that we need to actually look into ways to censure with other aspects to say you can't have your pension. You can't leave here with all your taxpayer-funded benefits after you have created such shameful acts that you have to bow out and resign from Congress. There needs to be stricter penalties with that.
Now that 2 members have resigned, Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez, the ultimate margin in the Republican-led House will not change. We expect there just still to be one Republican defection. That's all Mike Johnson can afford on any party line vote, which goes to show you how significant every seat is in the razor-thin GOP majority. Manu Raju, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Pope Leo getting ready for the next stop on his tour of Africa. Ahead, the message he brought to Algeria and a look at his send-off.
What is going on?
What is going on? Later, a North Carolina man finds himself in the middle of a shark feeding frenzy at sea. We'll tell you how he got himself mixed up in this maritime mess.
The biggest games have a few 100 million players and fans, which is already big. But gaming overall is at 3.4 billion players. This is the entertainment of the 21st century. There's no kid out there who's not playing video games. So even though it's big, right, it's $200 billion business in 2026, it's even just to start. This is going to go much further.
I'm David Culver in Wuhan, China.
CNN Seoul.
Hong Kong.
Istanbul.
In Athens, Greece.
In Copenhagen, Denmark.
In London, and this is CNN.
I'm Don Riddell in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
This powerful day of coverage will reveal the global nature of the crisis and the growing movement to end it.
When you bring people together, it gives all of us strength.
Hashtag MyFreedomDay, today on CNN.
I'm Clarissa Ward in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and this is CNN.
Pope Leo just bid farewell to Algeria and is heading now for Cameroon, the second stop on his tour of Africa. The Pope left from Algiers, the capital of Algeria, where he arrived earlier this week. And a farewell ceremony wrapped up just a short time ago. On Tuesday, the pontiff made a personal pilgrimage to the Basilica of St. Augustine. He helped plant an olive tree there as a symbol of friendship between Christians and Muslims. St. Augustine inspired Leo to become a priest and was known for denouncing wars. Leo XIV is a member of the Augustinian religious order and is the first Augustinian pope. Ukrainian officials say at least 5 people were killed, dozens more injured after a Russian missile strike hit the southeastern city of Dnipro. Officials released this video here showing what appears to be medics providing aid on Tuesday. But both the location and the date of the video have not yet been verified. CNN's Claire Sebastian joins me now from London with more on Russia's overnight attacks in its war on Ukraine, as Ukraine's president and NATO's leader are having separate meetings with allies. Claire?
Yeah, good morning, Brian. A raft of diplomatic meetings expected today. We've got the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which is this grouping of 50 countries that come together to coordinate military support for Ukraine. That is happening in Berlin, co-chaired by the German and British defense ministers. President Zelensky continues with his sort of short tour of Europe. He's been in Berlin this week. He's in Norway and is expected to travel on to Italy. All of this, he said in a post on X this morning, the top diplomatic priority right now, he said, is cooperation for the sake of air defense. This is going to be the common thread, I think, that we see running through these diplomatic meetings because of course, as you noted, Russian attacks continue unabated and the challenges of averting them are only increasing, I think, partly also because the war in the Middle East has increased global demand for air defense interceptors, in particular US-made Patriot missiles. So I think we're going to see more pledges from allies. The UK, going into this meeting, has said that it will provide the biggest ever shipment of drones to Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion. Germany and the UK have already pledged more money for this NATO-led initiative to buy US-made interceptors and other equipment. But I think, look, if you look at what's happening now compared to, say, the similar meetings that we saw from Zelensky in European capitals 3 or so years ago, it is striking the extent to which Ukraine has flipped this sort of patron-client relationship with its allies on its head through the pace of its own battlefield innovation. They are now looking just as much as what they can give to Ukraine as what they can get from Ukraine in terms of battlefield data, in terms of knowledge. There's joint ventures being set up and expanded, new deals this week on drone production in some of these European countries. So I think that is critical. That gives Ukraine leverage with its allies. But of course, the other elephant in the room here, Brian, is that the US-Israeli war with Iran has fundamentally stalled the diplomatic process to end this war, and we're starting to see growing calls to reinvigorate that.
All right, Claire Sebastian for us in London. Claire, thank you. More on our top story this hour. Just ahead, what we are learning from the White House about the next potential round of U.S.-Iran talks and the latest developments in the Strait of Hormuz.
I'm Bill Weir in Greenland, and this is CNN.
I'm David Culver in Wuhan, China.
CNN Seoul.
Hong Kong.
Istanbul.
In Athens, Greece.
In Copenhagen, Denmark.
In London, and this is CNN.
Selling and using cannabis.
Do you wish you had started using cannabis earlier in life?
I do. So do my kids. Does their shared passion for pot pose any risks? Dr. Sanjay Gupta reports. Read 8 on CNN.
I'm Nick Robertson in Islamabad, Pakistan, and this is CNN.
US President Donald Trump has hinted that US-Iran peace talks could resume this week. Tehran says it will continue to take part in talks despite believing Washington is, and I quote Tehran here, not trustworthy. CNN's Kristen Holmes now with more from the White House.
Well, Iranian officials say that they still haven't agreed to a second round of negotiations, but President Trump is leaning hard into the idea that there's going to be some kind of a second round, and in 2 days. In a brief interview with a New York Post reporter who is currently in Islamabad, this is what he said. He said, you should stay there, really, because something could be happening over the next 2 days, and we're more inclined to go there. It's more likely, and you know why, because the field marshal is doing a great job. Now, he was referring to the Pakistani field marshal who is helping with these negotiations. And during that conversation, President Trump wouldn't say who was going to be part of that delegation, at least on the U.S. side. However, we have since confirmed that it would still be the same group that was sent to Pakistan before. You would have the Vice President, J.D. Vance, as well as Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. It's still, though, remains unclear if there's actually going to be these talks. Right now, it seems incredibly preliminary, but of course, President Trump upping the ante by saying something was going to happen in 2 days. Now, all of this is happening as we know that there are 10,000 U.S. service members involved in the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. CENTCOM saying that 6 Iranian ships left port and then turned back under their direction. There are at least 12 U.S. naval ships right now that are part of this blockade, but there are still a lot of questions as to how long this is going to last and which side is going to blink first, particularly when it comes to economic ramifications, which this closing of the Strait of Hormuz is going to impact both countries in an extremely negative way. Kristen Holmes, CNN, the White House.
Well, CNN's Lenny Jokos joining us now with the latest developments in the Strait of Hormuz. UAE has been very sort of noisy about this. They are calling what Iran is doing in the Strait economic terrorism. Clearly, the US looking at upping the sort of economic ante, as it were, and really putting a squeeze on the Iranian economy through this blockade at present. We just heard the latest there from Kristen with the US perspective. Eleni, what do we know about what is going on today as we speak in the Strait?
Yeah. So the short answer is we don't know exactly what's going on. All we're doing is relying on marine traffic data. I just got off the phone with Kepler, and when I asked them the question, how is the US Navy blockade being enforced, and they said, short answer, we don't actually know. But what we can do is monitor the traffic. And what is interesting, and we spoke about this over the last few days, the sanctioned vessel, the Rich Starry, that it was able to make the transit through the Strait of Hormuz unchallenged, then stops in the Gulf of Oman. It is laden with methanol. It stops at a particular point. It then does a U-turn and then goes back to the Iranian checkpoint. And now we know the chippers are looking at two checkpoints that they face, the Iranian checkpoint and, of course, the U.S. naval blockade, and that being a checkpoint as well. This is what U.S. CENTCOM put on X a short time ago. They say more than 10,000 U.S. sailors, Marines and airmen, along with over a dozen warships and dozens of aircrafts, are executing the mission to blockade ships entering and departing Iranian ports. During the first 24 hours, no ships made it past the U.S. blockade. 6 merchant vessels complied with direction from U.S. forces to turn around and re-enter Iranian ports in the other side. So this is really important because it tells us a couple of things. That the U.S. naval blockade clearly might be in the Gulf of Oman. We know that they have 12 naval ships that are embarking on this very complex reconnaissance mission to stop vessels that are linked to Iran, that are coming from Iranian ports, Iranian territorial waters. And if you look at other marine traffic data, Becky, you also see other vessels that stop around the same point in the Gulf of Oman and then make that U-turn. So now the question becomes, are we going to start seeing vessels that are coming from non-Iranian ports, non-Iranian territorial waters? When I ask that question, still no answer. They just don't know. Because the reality is that shippers still have to pass the Iranian checkpoint, which of course is creating a double dilemma for a lot of the vessels that are just standing by and waiting to see how this plays out.
Good to have you, Eleni. Thank you very much indeed. You are bang up to date, folks, on what we understand to be going on there in what is that really important, critical waterway. Still ahead, not everyone talking GLP-1 medications is losing weight, but evidence suggests the drugs are helping anyway. More on that is after this.
Amir Timur, the creator of a vast empire and founder of the illustrious Timurid dynasty. His true brilliance lay in his visionary perception of the world. As the architect of an empire that became the cradle of the Eastern Renaissance, he made Samarkand the capital of the world, a crossroads of science, art, and unprecedented international diplomacy. King Henry IV of England, King Charles VI of France, and King Henry III of Spain maintained correspondence with the Lord of the East with profound respect. For the European courts, Amir Timur became a pivotal ally, a guarantor of the Silk Road's prosperity, and a strategist who wove civilizations into a legacy that has united East and West for 690 years.
I'm Richard Quest. I love traveling the world. Broaden the mind, open the heart, and I'm not done yet. It's time to embrace new adventures.
It is my favorite building. To see it from the bridge is extraordinary.
Find the fun.
You're just there to enjoy it. No worries. It's the Bondi vibe.
And seize the moments. 100! In this world of wonder.
This weekend on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
I'm Daniel Dae Kim. I'm going to South Korea to figure out how this small nation conquered the world with its culture.
I saw your move.
That's gonna get people up out of their seat.
Tuck it out.
That's savage.
They're making Asians look really cool.
Join me and meet the artists and creators behind the phenomenon.
K Everything premieres May 9th on CNN in association with Hyundai.
In every corner of Africa are breathtaking landscapes, inspiring breakthroughs,
All right, let's go!
and the people that enrich communities. Delve deep into every facet of this great continent. Inside art and culture, sports, inside business, tech, and so much more. Inside Africa on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
Today, CNN reflects on stories from the past 10 years that shed light on the action and activism dedicated to ending modern-day slavery.
Modern slavery is a stigma on humanity.
This powerful day of coverage will reveal the global nature of the crisis and the growing movement to end it.
When you bring people together, it gives all of us strength.
Vaccinate!
Hashtag My Freedom Day, today on CNN.
I have been documenting humanity for over 40 years in more than 150 countries, and most specifically on modern-day slavery and human trafficking for about the last 17 years. My name is Lisa Christine, and I'm a humanitarian photographer. I've had this amazing partnership with the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Foundation, and actually one of the projects that we worked on last year of note was really going out and documenting the supply chain of technology and looking where there may be gaps or places where forced labor or modern slavery could take root. We visited 5 different countries across 3 different continents, and we met with activists, and we met with vulnerable migrants, and we visited different mines around the world. And there's an image of a young girl in the Mica mines, and she's holding a big sledgehammer beyond her years, you know. And here we have this child, when we have child labor, pounding the earth to get mica out of it, alongside her family members. And she's just a very young child. And yeah, to me, that's very touching that this exists, that this little child who should be being educated is mining things out of the earth.
Welcome back to Early Start. This is your business breakout with some of today's business headlines. Today is April 15th, which means tax day here in the U.S. Americans must get their returns to the IRS before midnight local time or file for an extension. This year, experts are advising against using general use AI platforms for help, saying they're not engineered or tested for that, and your personal financial details may not be secure. Shares of major U.S. airlines rallied Tuesday on merger speculation. Reports say the CEO of United pitched a potential merger with American Airlines to President Trump a few months ago. The deal would create the world's largest airline, but many questions whether it can win regulatory approval. And then let's check in on how global oil prices are responding to the possibility of renewed talks between the U.S. and Iran. You see them here. While futures remain high, they appear to have softened a bit in recent days following the fragile ceasefire announcement. U.S. crude and the global benchmark Brent crude are both trading back below $100 a barrel.